Hey, everybody, welcome back to Conversations in Ken's Café. I'm your host, Ken Somerville. We have a very special gardener, and he's got his own company, his own website. We're going to bring that up in a bit, sharing wonderful information. Matt, it's amazing to have you on here. I love having other people talking about organics. I watched one of your
Thank
wife's
you.
shorts on air cloning, and basically I built my own air cloner as well. So guys, they're supplying wonderful information. You can find them their website for their products, videos. They have their own YouTube channel. Guys, don't hesitate to sign up. Go over to their YouTube and sign up. But sorry, I took up all the front end there, Matt. Matt, introduce yourself and your company and what you're all about, brother.
Oh, thanks so much, Ken. And it's an honor. Thank you so much for having me on here. Speaking of my wife, I was like, as she was leaving, I was like, oh man, I wish you were on this too. But she's amazing. But anyways, let's see. We're a garden store, I guess. But the reality is, it's not really the backstory and what we're passionate about. I started this about a decade ago, and our mission is to empower people to grow life where they live, wherever that is. And it's pretty neat. We're like right outside of Boston. We live, in a fairly rural area. We got a bunch of chickens, and some more land. But, wherever you are, our passion is to support people and as affordably as possible too, because I think agriculture is so critical to our future, and not just agriculture, but all ways to engage. As you can see, I have like fish tanks, and I think the way humans are engaging in a relationship with the rest of nature on Earth, is evolving, and we're passionate about improving that relationship for the betterment of humans and also the rest of the world, all individual creatures, but the ecosystem as a whole. I can go on forever. So long, yeah. Anything more specific than that? That was pretty broad.
Well, I have a question. Is that an aquaponics system on top of that fish tank?
Yeah, and it is an aquaponics system. So it's a discus aquaponics system, which is pretty neat because discus are, they are as hard. I was humbled by them. They're difficult fish to care for. They're from the upper basin of the Amazon, and it's interesting because they want clean water, but I see a lot of aquariums where it's like super sterile. And the reality is they pick around and scavenge a ton. And what I started learning was they basically, like, as the Amazon River, upper Amazon basin floods, it like flows into planted areas. And these guys really, while the water might not have a lot of nitrates and like fertilizer ingredients, ultimately, like it does have a lot of tannins and whatnot. And so long story short, this water pumps up into the tray above, and I don't know if I can actually, I got things pretty mobile, so I can walk around and show you a bunch of stuff today if you want. But yeah, so these are my fish, and they're doing great. And it's awesome because the plants, I literally planted those guys, and I've never had more success with house plants and done nothing with them. And the fish tank, I don't have to clean it, and once in a while worms spill out of that upper basin into the fish tank and feed them and whatnot. And I'm pushing that more and more. So yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. A lot of people don't understand, guys. Worms actually breathe through their skin. And if you have enough dissolved oxygen in your water, they can live in the water column without any problems. I know I had that in my aquaponic system. The same thing. The worms would end up in the fish tank. They wouldn't last very long. Those fish just love, put them on a hook and you're catching your own fish, but don't do that in your aquaponic system. Okay.
No, but to your point, like it's so good for the fish too, right? Like those, I feel worms from my worm castings actually. And it's like their health improves so significantly. And it's funny, you go to the most beautiful places on earth, right? And there's no human managing it. And so you can learn something from that. It's like, if we set things up right, and we are, involved right now, we've altered, ecology pretty significantly, but like if you set things up and intelligently, you can just step back and everything works well, and I mean, it's getting there with this, so yeah.
Well, it's absolutely amazing just how Mother Nature has set it all up, and you're true. The truth of what you said is, if we set it up like she has, we can just step back and go, holy man, does she have this down?
Right, Ken? Yes. And that's it's I man, I'm so glad to be. I've got to binge watch all of your episodes because I was just watching Chris Trump earlier. I was watching your last episode with Adam. Your material, I mean, it's incredible. The people you bring on the show, and why I'm so honored to be here. The other people you brought on are just incredible. They're talking about going back to the core of agriculture in a lot of ways. And you think, I think a lot of our knowledge has disappeared, unfortunately. You think about the way I've looked at it is like almost like when you hear about heirloom varieties of seeds, like with that goes methodologies to grow those seeds in those regions, and we've lost a lot of that information. And the neat thing is with technology, we're relearning it, spreading what information we have. And thank you for bringing that information out there. I really, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I am very fortunate to be able to bring those people on and share this information. And it's so important because it doesn't matter, what genre, whether it's, Korean natural farming, regenerative, etc. It literally all comes down to cell division, whether it's our bodies or a plant or an animal, and understanding that that cell division is controlled by the biology. And really, I'm not a gardener, I'm not a farmer. I grow biology, and then I let the biology do what it does naturally, which is grow the plants and the animals, and I want to get healthy from that.
Right? Yes, I love that. That is 100%. So
well, you guys are an amazing couple, but how the hell did you get into this, man? Like, this isn't having your own garden center isn't something that most people, would ever consider. So how did you guys get into this?
well, let's see. All right, let's try back. So me and my wife met actually on a sheep farm, funny enough, right? We were actually on a bus on a way. We were animal science majors, pre-veterinary medicine. And I signed up for animal science thinking it was gonna be more. I didn't realize it was pretty much farm animals, which was a good learning experience for me. I learned, agricultural animals. I should have dug deeper into what the degree was about. But it was cool. I wanted to be a veterinarian at the time. And
hey
I met
man,
my
just
wife.
think that choice led you to your wife. So there was something there that you didn't want to look at the course curriculum. You wanted to meet your wife. You just didn't know it.
You're so right. I couldn't agree more. And it was the best thing I ever did. And I bugged her for a couple years until she finally started dating me. And we've just been, what we shared was a passion for life, on Earth, whether, big and small. And she's actually amazing. She's an incredible horseback rider, which, she doesn't talk about. I'm trying to get more horse stuff on our
Cool.
channel now. But anyways, we both, always had lots of, passion about this. And I went to, long story short, wound up in the tech world, got an MBA and a master's in environmental studies, and was focused on commercializing clean tech, and was kind of burnt. The tech industry is intense, and I'd find myself at night gardening and whatnot, and just really passionate about that, and like doing that a lot more. And long story short, we were in Colorado at the time, moved back to Massachusetts, where we're from. And before moving to Colorado, I'd worked at this place called the New England Wildlife Center, which is an incredible place. I'm literally in the moving truck and stopping by to say hi to all my old friends there. And they're like, "Well, what are you doing?" And I thought I was getting a job as a coder. And next, they were like, "Well, you want to work here for a bit?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." I don't even, my office was, like this weird, it was it was awesome. I was just helping with education and whatnot. And they had a lobby, and I asked them if I could, start selling like plants and whatnot in the lobby. And they said yes, and it just kind of kept going. And the reality is, this place, the focus of that organization was basically they do rehabilitate wildlife, and they're the biggest rehabilitator now in New England. But
Cool.
they see it. Their philosophy is that, like, by helping people to do that, I'm trying to say it right. Engaging people with these individual creatures will give them a passion for the entire species. It's hands-on experience that will help them, feel a part of these things. And so I kind of spun that out with the garden store, and like with plants. And my focus is really just helping people, engage with these plants successfully and however they can. And so, yeah. And that's the long. And then my wife, she was in corporate when we first started for the longest time at a corporate job, and paying our bills. And eventually, I was like, "Hey, come join me." And she jumped on about 5 years ago, and it's been amazing. Really feel fortunate. I mean, it's tough. I mean, we to do this full time, just the two of us, but it's busy, but we love it. It's like it's not easy all the time. We go home, care for chickens, guinea pigs, parakeets, fish tanks in here. You can see there's a lot going on here too. And so
Yeah.
it's never bored, never lonely, but always amazing. Always, love it. So.
Well, do what you love and love what you do. That passion is what keeps you working every day. It's what gets you up in the morning. Having started out with the animals and watching people come in and interact, and I know the stories. I've seen them in my own mind. I've watched people that have formed those connections, but the joy, the absolute joy is. And now that you're doing it with plants, you're seeing that same joy with people connecting with plants.
100%. Our where I'm sitting right now is a warehouse outside of Boston. And when people pull up, it's kind of darker, it's like a very commercial area. So when they walk through the door and they see this, they're like, "What? Where am I?" Like, I can't tell you how many people I've had say, when I walked through the front door, I wasn't sure where I was going. I actually came once and then drove away because it seemed sketchy. It's like this back parking lot, and I wasn't sure. Literally, I had some lady was like, I wasn't sure if it was getting murdered, but I said, "Hey, I'm going to come in and check it out." And I'm really glad I did. I was like, "Wow, awesome. Maybe we need to improve the entranceway." She's like, "Well, the sign that says fresh eggs, made me feel a little more comfortable." And I was like, "That's great. That's great." But it is striking, and I wanted to demonstrate that, like, if you bring plants, and life to wherever you are, there's an incredible benefit to humans. Like our emotional, physical, mental well-being is dependent upon it. Like if you went to a zoo, right, and you saw some primates in a concrete room where one, well, let's just say let's say chimpanzees, one was like making all the others sit in chairs under fluorescent lights with no windows 10 hours a day, you'd be like, that's really cruel. They can't live like that, and yet we do it to ourselves, and are surprised that there's so much emotional suffering right now, unfortunately, in that situation. So it's not the way humans are meant to live. I spend my life, I was never really that interested in sports and whatnot, and would study like plants and animals. That's what I was looking at and focusing on growing up. And you don't see, and I've come to learn that if you set the right ecosystem, if you put an individual in the right environment, they will thrive. And we are basically a product of our environment. And if you're wondering why you're struggling, you might want to look around and ask yourself, like, is the environment I'm putting. And one of the fortunate things about being a human is we get to, well, sometimes, not always, some of us are fortunate enough to get to choose the environment we're in. And I hope that for all humans. But yeah, sorry, I'm swatting.
Yep.
I'm a fan of, yeah, anyways.
That's fine.
I'm swatting flies. I allow it all to thrive.
Oh, thank you, Mandy, for your kind words. She's coming from your channel, Matt. So I don't think Mandy's your wife, because I think your wife's name is Judy, correct?
No, that is my wife, Mandy.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, that's her.
Thank
That's
you.
Her.
Okay. Well,
That's
and Mandy, I watched one of your video on cloning the rubber trees. Fantastic. I built my own air cloner as well. I learned it from, I wanted to clone tomatoes, but guys, you can clone almost anything in an air cloner. It's absolutely amazing. So if you want to grow a whole bunch of tomato plants, start 3 really early, then take that, make 100 tomato plants, and they're already in bloom. They've already went through the veg cycle. You're putting them out, and they're just going to go nuts. But sorry, I got sidetracked.
No, I love that. We made that DIY cloner, and we worked really hard. We bought containers at the dollar store. Try to make it as cheap as possible. It's funny, we're really bad at sales, which is okay. Which is why I'm excited about YouTube, because honestly, like, while we own a store and our living depends on it, our passion really is about helping people. Times are getting tough right now, and like the last thing we want to agriculture should reduce your cost of living. And
Yes.
so my mission is to help people do it for free whenever possible, to reduce their costs, to,
Yep.
reuse things. And that DIY cloner, I will say though, after building that, and like, I was like, you know what, maybe buying a ready-made cloner is actually worth the investment a little bit. Like, they're a lot of work, and like, I've got like a turbo cloner that's lasted a decade, and it's great. But you can clone just about anything. Like, even we have beautiful pitcher plants, and we tried cloning it by putting it in dirt, and it just never rooted. And in the aero cloner, it actually took. So I was pretty stoked about that.
Well, it's absolutely amazing how simple the system is, and how it does promote the development of roots. Now, I know lots of times I'll put a little bit of lactic acid bacteria into the water as well,
Cool.
which does seem to help. But I don't know if you watched the show
That's
with
really cool. I never heard you do that. Yeah.
Mo on the Muncher juice, but I'm looking forward to trying the Muncher juice, which is like so packed with biology and nutrition, to see if that's going to work. Because most of the time in an air cloner, you're not wanting to put anything in because you want to promote the growth. But yeah, I'm thinking that Muncher juice might just be work for hydroponics. Instead of having to use the salt base, we can use 100% biology base. But we'll have to check that out in the
I have to look
future.
at this. Which episode is this? What's the which one should I look for? That'll be the next one I watch. I told you I was gonna binge watch some of this stuff. So yeah.
Mo with the
Okay.
Muncher juice 2 weeks ago.
Cool.
Yeah, we had him on. And then the other one, and it's a product you probably would like to have on your website, is Wiggle Brew out of Florida. So you're gonna want to watch that. Sam Baker, I had him on this channel as well, but he was on with Leighton as well, talking more the scientific end of things. But that's a product I think you guys would really do well promoting as well.
Amazing. Yeah. Let us know. It is something fun. I do enjoy the part of the job where when I find something cool, I get to get it, in front. It's
Yep.
funny. I used to spend, if our customers were asking for a product, I would stock it. And then I started getting to a point where, me and Manny would talk about, it's like, we don't believe in this. We don't think it's worth what it costs. And just standing our ground on, what we believe in, whether from a financial perspective, particularly around like pest control products. It was funny. We had like a MDAR, Mass Department of Agriculture guy, come by. He's a pesticide inspector, and
Right.
I'm very much about biologicals. I always discourage people from using pest control, and if they are, it's going to be like isopropyl and neem oil, if at all. And he was definitely like, okay, you don't really have too many pesticides in here, basically. So yeah, but so that's there's always, but now it's neat because there's so many biological, like fascinating, like biological solutions that are coming out to get things going, like you're talking about. So yeah.
Well, integrated pest management is an amazing field, and like I've had Claude
Yes.
Roberts on a half-ass regular basis from Anitis Bioprotection, and it's so easy now to use bugs to fight bugs because they're
Right.
finding all these species that work to do this.
Oh my gosh. And if you can be patient, it's the way to go, right? I've been, even in this story, the one thing I can't find a biological for, if anyone knows about, is mealy bugs. I have not figured out something that can really take those guys out, but just about everything else, once you establish it, you're protected from there on out. You were talking about lactobacillus, and this is something I've kind of almost adapted from KNF, and is powdered milk. And so when I see powdery mildew, I love dusting powdered milk on it, and I'm assuming the lactobacillus will form. And basically, when it solubilizes, it's like the timing works. And for whatever reason, on PM, powdered milk dusting seems to work phenomenally well, better than anything I've ever messed with besides that. So it's like,
Well,
how do you, not only do you like introduce the microbes, which I think a lot of what Trump, Chris Trump was talking about was related to that, like, well, he
yeah.
was talking about more about like the he's passionate about the local ones. And I think sometimes when you provide the foods for those things, they show up, of course, right?
Yep. Well, it's the predator prey model. You have to have the food source for them to eat. If they don't have a food source, they're not going to bother to show up.
It's so true, right? And sometimes the
Yep.
food source, unfortunately, needs to be powdery mildew. And so I know, there's like, I believe a few thousand species of powdery mildew, and different ones target different species. So I've seen like, I've had my squash have PM, and I'm like, you know what? And I've noticed almost like, and I've applied the powdered milk, and I've seen it not show up on any other species of plant. And my hunch is that I'm almost getting it moving on there, and then it is, stalling and preventing it from spreading to other plants, because it's preventing those species specific powdery mildews from showing up on other forms, because it's
Yeah.
showing up on one species. I don't know if that was, might not have made a lot of sense.
Well,
Sorry.
and the thing is that powdery mildew is a mold or a fungus, however you want to phrase it, and
Yeah.
you need something that's going to eat that. And before we go off on that, Serena, yes, they have a YouTube channel. It should be in the description as well, but I'll throw it up here again. YouTube at Garden in Team, and yeah, and they have their Instagram, and they've got a lot of videos on the Instagram, so you might want to check that out as well. But
Thanks so
you
much.
know that we also have my lovely little wife, Silly Lily. She put up the Mome Meon the Muncher creator. That's the
Cool.
YouTube link for anybody that wants it. But yeah, and of course she's putting up the channel for you guys as well, so it's easier for them to copy and paste it in. But and Yellow Skunk Farm says they have a cool YouTube.
Thanks,
So,
bud.
and if you don't know who Yellow Skunk Farms is, he was on with Leighton a few weeks ago. He actually built a horizontal soil system and an aquaponic system as one, self-watering through a stream that he has running through his system in his garage. So
That's
absolutely
sick.
amazing.
Oh my gosh, I gotta check that one out. I
Yeah.
love that. There's so much cool stuff going on, and that's the neat thing, and as much as technology, it's interesting because technology can almost undermine our engagement with the natural world, but then it also can enhance it, in certain
Yep.
ways, and allow us to communicate such amazing stories that we can, connect with. So that's so cool.
Well, it's amazing. Like you were talking earlier about, the connection with plants and humans. Think of all the the Eastern people that have built Zen gardens. There was a reason for that.
Yeah.
You go there to meditate. That energy that comes from the plants and the environment is going to aid in your meditation. Like if you're
Yep.
depressed, go sit in the forest, go hug a tree,
Yep.
'cause that you can actually gain that energy. People don't understand just how much we can communicate on
Yep.
an energetic level. Like you're sitting around with those plants around, you're not just getting the oxygen, okay? You're getting
Mhm.
their love because you love them. They love you back.
Yes, yes. You know what? I love science, right? And look,
Mhm.
there's data to back up what you're saying, right? Like
Yep.
NASA did studies that demonstrates, productivity increases, human health, like the rate of sickness, absenteeism for workers, like when you have plants. But the other part of science is that sometimes science is a questioning methodology, right? And
Yep.
just because science doesn't understand something or hasn't explained something, it doesn't mean it's not true. And so sometimes we dismiss some of these things that we're talking about because science is so far away from figuring them out, like the energy, to your point. And I can't tell you how many times I've just trusted my hunch to put plants, like I know where my healthy ecosystems are, and by
Mhm.
just putting certain things in a healthy ecosystem, their issues resolve. I can't tell you how many times I've had, doing this for a decade. It's amazing. I'm so fortunate because I get to learn from the questions and the information that people bring to me. And I can't tell you how many times people have been like, I was struggling with something in my life, and my plants struggled during that time too.
Yep.
Even though I was trying my best to take care of them, but they feed, our energy is intertwined with other living things so often. And,
Yep.
we thrive and suffer together.
Well, and they've
So yeah.
discovered that plants actually have more sensory perception than humans do. We've only got the five senses, and they have more than we do. Like, they know that you're wearing that blue shirt today. I know a lot of the conspiracy theories from when I was young, like, the auric field and all that. Oh, that's all that wooey stuff. And until they found Kirlian photography and they can actually show it,
Yep.
A lot
Yeah.
of this stuff is
Science couldn't explain it,
woo-woo.
so therefore it's false,
Yeah.
instead of just being like beyond what we know about science. Yeah, totally. That's
Yep.
100%. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Like I need to get my energy right with my citrus trees. I think they're unhappy. I need to get them out of their environment. I don't know why. I always struggle with citrus. Something about me and citrus no longer do well. I don't know.
Well, you got to watch Mo, and eventually they'll have a product that you can get. They only have it in Mexico right now, where you can buy it. But he had a buddy whose citrus tree. They were gonna literally rip it out. It was done for. They put on the muncher juice, and now that citrus tree is not only come back, but it's producing amazing fruit again.
Oh my, I'm done. I want nothing more, and I'll have success, and then they'll like decline, and I'm not sure what's going on, what I'm doing wrong with mine. I have some that are doing well now, fortunately, but one that's struggling, and maybe I'll check out this muncher juice. 100%, I would do anything.
Well, it's all.
I think the ecology is not right,
Yeah, it's all about the biology. There's something missing from the biology around that tree, that it's not getting everything that it needs, whether that's an amino acid or whatever it is. There's something missing. And have you ever heard of quorum sensing?
No, talk to me. Tell me everything.
Quorum sensing, generally you'll see in an aggregate. Okay, so that clump of dirt underground that's been brought together and formed around the root. And when enough biology gathers in that environment, then what happens is it's like a university. It all comes together, starts doing scientific research, and it knows if there's something not there that's necessary for the plant. Say boron for tomatoes. This is where I first originally found this methodology or understanding. And it literally will create the biology necessary to go out and mine that substance that's not there.
Wow.
But it takes a while. But this is something Mother Nature does automatically, as long as you're not disturbing the soil structure and breaking that clump up. It actually gets to the point where it can take this to another level. That's where you can take sand, start with just raw sand, turn it into a vibrant soil by adding the biology that'll clump it together, use it, and you'll start seeing new life forms under the microscope. And over time, it can actually literally create any genetic code that has been stored in the biology, in the water structure, because like every cell that is developed has the full genetic code in it, whether that's the genetic code of a human being, but of all the biology that's available. All it needs is the right components, the right molecules of A, B, and C to create the new life form. And you can literally go from, single-celled organisms right up through Mother Nature's, list into the worms and the arthropods, up into the birds, etc. It can all be recreated because the genetic code is actually stored in the biology that builds it, in the cells themselves. It's the understanding is totally next level of what is possible. And this is something that's really new to a lot of people, but I think that's one of the functions of biochar is a safe environment for those universities. Because you think of an aggregate, what goes through an aggregate? Oh, a worm. So you live in a city, man. How would you like to have Godzilla come through, rip it all apart, and start all over again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not much, not much. Yeah, that is so fascinating. I I don't even know how to respond to that, I guess. I'm thinking about like worms and dirt and biochar and genetics right now. My head is, going to explode with ideas. I just, speaking of like, I just added a bunch of, I'm pretty excited, worms into over here. I'm trying to get more live food. So black worms actually are really
Yeah.
neat, and they're commonly found in riverways. And I just inoculated here, and they went nuts. You can see them kind of picking around at the ground because I added a bunch. Hopefully, some of them get into the dirt before they get eaten. But yeah,
Yep.
one of the things to your point though is like it's almost like the aging process, right?
Hmm.
The hardest fish tank to care for is a new one. Once
Yeah.
it's past 6 months, the older, like my old tanks, like this tank was actually a terrarium, actually. So it
Oh,
was a
cool.
terrarium for a long time, and I actually didn't remove the substrate; it's filled with water, and it took a long time to settle out and not be filled with tannins and whatnot. But like the biology in there is so old and rich. To your point, right? It
Hmm.
has a history, and it's irreplicable. So whenever I go start a new aquatic environment, I take a huge chunk of the
Yep.
gravel and plant matter and all of that and move it to start that new tank. And that life will just spread out into other areas. And you can't replicate it. And it's funny because if you're starting, one of my friends started an aquarium, is like, I can't get it to, go. I'm like, start with just water and snails and stuff, and like go to a pond near you,
Yeah.
get it going. And fish are the last thing to introduce. I love shrimp and snails and plants. And then I just introduced, I have this shrimp and snail tank, and I introduced pea puffers because the snails were out of control and they're kind of managing the population. They're like these tiny little freshwater predators. So
Yep. Well,
you got to
and it
wait. You got to wait, Yeah.
comes back to predator prey. You need the prey species for the next evolution, the next evolution before you can have fish, because
Yeah.
fish doesn't have anything there to consume. And
Yeah.
that's people need to understand, and Leighton mentions this quite a bit on the Soil Matters, of the fish having the biofilm on the outside of their bodies as a second stomach, ingesting the biology in the water itself. And if that's
Wow.
not there, do you think you're going to have healthy fish if they don't have that food source?
That's fascinating. Who mentioned this? I want to,
Leighton Morrison talks about it all the time.
cool.
He actually started out, how he got really involved in this, and he had a couple of shows here a few weeks ago where we talked about his story, and him meeting Dr. Elaine Ingham, etc. It was all because of aquaponics and him dealing with fish shit, basically, and
Yeah.
finding out how to what it is and how it works, because he saw amazing plant reactions
Yeah.
from the waste of an aquaponics system, and he took it to Rodale, to Dr. Elaine, and said, you know I've got this stuff, it does amazing things, but I have no idea. 18 months he worked with her to
That's
find
cool.
out why, and now it's like, holy, this it's amazing.
The
Taking your
slime layer, huh?
yeah,
Fascinating. That I so it is very these discus fish are famous for their slime layers because when they
yep,
have babies, the babies eat their slime layer. They're like it's like
yeah,
their form of milk, and they literally clean them and eat off them. But there's also issues with when you bring one different fish together, the bacteria might not
mhm,
line up, and one might get sick. But I always say it's funny, like people ask, how do I water my plants? And I feel bad because I'm like trying to help people. I'm like, get a fish tank. It's like cheating. It
yep,
is like cheating. I can't tell you, especially with like house plants, like or just in general, if you haven't provided it, I found the first time you give fish tank water or pond water, to a plant, it comes to life.
yep,
And I just all water that is fed to plants here, it's always, almost always, unless we're in a real rush and we just have to pull, a hose out, we have time, but almost always, 95% of the time, let's say, it comes from a fish tank to the plants.
yep,
And it's just, that way we can freshwater the plant, the fish, and then whatever water we need. But sometimes I'll be honest, I'm like, man, I don't want to pull water out of the fish tank. It seems really balanced. I don't, it's everything's good, so but I try to, I'm hoping, probably within the next year, pretty much all the plants in here will be integrated with an aquatic ecosystem. And you think about,
Cool.
particularly for annuals, I think most annuals, or a lot of annuals, have initially evolved from probably being on floodplains. They're fast-growing annuals, and they want, high levels of nutrients, particularly nitrogen early on, and then phosphorus, which is typically deeper in the bank. And so I think incorporating in aquaponics is traditionally this recirculating system, but I think you can develop I don't always think that's the best way to do it. I think with houseplants it works great because these guys grow perpetually. But if you're growing crops that are going to be harvested, aquaponics is super tricky because your plants are the filters and they grow, and you basically have this bigger and bigger filter. And then when you chop it, your filter's gone. And I had an issue. I had tilapia with passion fruit, which are the plants behind me. Some disease set in on the passion fruit, and they went from being the filtration system to a contributor of waste as they died and the root systems broke down. And it taught me a lesson about, like, you have to think very thoughtfully about the long term of the system, especially if you're using it for filtration. And funny enough, like for houseplants, fish tank water is perfect, right? And like the clean, like, because when you're, if you have a fish tank and you have plants, people are always talking about hanging plants being a pain to water. I'm like, look, just set it up like this. Look at that. I mean, that is as easy as it gets. I've done nothing for those plants. They're actually just overgrown. I just need to trim them back. That's it.
Now that's a continuous flow system or a flood and drain?
Yeah, so I can it is, so it pumps up, and actually I have it on interval timer, so it's on for about 2 minutes and then off for about 5, just on off, pumping on and off. And so it does flood through to the other side and then it floods back, but it also floods backwards through the drainage system. And so I put some worms up there too, and that way sorry, I'm trying to get the good shot. I don't know if that's some help. Is that better?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. And or here you go. So yeah, and and I got a bunch of them here. I've got some other systems, but I've tried. It's cool. I've tried as many systems as I can. I love flood and drain systems in general. I think, even for soil-based systems, right? Just you think about, if you dig deep enough, there's a water line, right? And it goes up and down, up and down. That's really a big part of how plants gain their get water. And I had this amazing friend who about a decade ago who was like, the more I grow, the more I realize, bottom watering is really critical. And I think I've started to recognize that myself. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, what I was always doing was because I in Canada growing year round, I had an indoor system. So I would actually top water, but I would have a tray underneath where I could catch the excess. I would always water to excess. Okay. And I watered every single day. Then I would allow that excess to sit for 45 minutes, no longer than that, because then it's starting to kill the biology that exists there. And you can go anaerobic, and you don't want that.
Yeah.
So I would literally, I had a turkey baster, and I would suck off any excess after 45 minutes. But then I never had to worry about any of my soils going anaerobic or drying out, or hydrophobic, I should say, drying out, where when I watered, the water wouldn't hold in the soil structure.
Yeah.
It always had enough moisture there. And that's where, bottom watering, that's where for those that don't understand, the water wicks up through the cell structure and through the soil and the biology, and waters the entire soil structure. Because remember, you're not just watering your plants, guys, you're watering your biology. It's the biology that grows the plant. So keep your biology happy, make sure that they have enough water. That's where you recommend 70% moisture content. I know I generally do. And I tell people it's as easy as grab your soil, squeeze it. If you got a little water dribbling out, you got around 70% moisture content, and everybody's going to be happy.
I think what I've learned is, to your point, like it's not water or too wet. It's about still water. If water's moving, So it's almost like if you are flooding to full saturation one time a day, and then you have
Mhm.
stagnant water sitting there, that's a problem. But if it's going up and down all day long, you will have, and from with aerated water, you'll be fine. You'll be great.
Yeah.
And especially if you never top water, when you top water, it tends to compress the soil over time a little bit, so there's less air
Mhm.
pockets. So if you start from a borderline situation like cocoa, it'll just wick up indefinitely. You got to make sure. The problem can be if you have any dry spots in there, they'll never get wet,
Yep.
and that can happen. But what I've found and what I've been messing with, I've actually been growing. I love biochar, and I grew on a flood table over behind me in just biochar as the medium,
Oh,
and it
cool.
worked. It was so cool. It worked phenomenally well. We made a video about it. It did get a little alkaline at one point, and I had to like tweak that and had to fertilize more. Um, but a phenomenal medium, right? Like, and what a sustain. I love biochar, right? You're literally sequestering permanently carbon and
Yep.
turning it into an incredible medium that, like, as a soil amendment, it's incredible. I call it, like, the way I try to explain it to people, because it took me forever to even like wrap my head around what the benefits of biochar is. I think, to your point, it's like little ecological blocks for microbes.
Yep.
It's like a battery, though, to me, right? Like for fertilizer and microbes and everything, where it's like it stores it up and it can get pulled away as it's needed. So the microbes, the ecology in there will basically store what it needs and then pull it away as it needs it, and it just balances everything out. And just from my experience, like, soil works better longer. You don't have to fertilize very often. My Mandy came up with a really great insight, which was, we have a sloped hill and we started applying it there. We make it and, just spread it over there, and it came to
Mhm.
life. And it was like, oh, one of the big issues you have with slopes is runoff, right? And like fertilizer leaching. And
Yep.
I think what it did was it caught it, it caught fertilizer from leaching down that hill, and it brought it to life. And now things are growing really well. Now the roots are taking hold there. And so it's bringing that whole ecology on that hill to life, which is super cool to watch.
Well,
So,
and it actually, because as soon as you have plants, etc., there, and it slows that water down, even for a tenth of a second, you might have
yeah,
another
that's a good point.
5,000 molecules sink into your soil and be held there. As soon as it's starting to be held,
Yeah.
life can come back because everything needs water. Water is life. If we don't have it, we die very, very quickly. Same with plants and animals. The same with the biology in our soil structure needs that water because that's part of their cell structure is water.
Yeah, and to your, like, I think soil, if you've ever been in like a coral reef, like a shipwreck, right? Like,
Yeah.
you'll see like this vast desert of ocean, right? And to me, that's what, a lot of like depleted lawns and yards and whatnot are like.
Hmm.
And they're really hard to bring back. You almost need to create an island, and then it can spread from there. But like,
Yeah.
you need to create a biological island, either with some perennials, some biochar mixed in. But once it gets a hole, it can then spread from that point.
Yep.
So,
Well, and you need to understand that biology, like on land, I'm not sure about in the ocean structure, but biology on land can only move 1 inch per year. So it
yeah,
takes a long time for biology to move across, 10 feet is going to take, several decades. But
yeah,
as a human being, if we're adding the biology in and the mix of biology, like aquatic biology, is the base foundation of all of life. That's that predator prey again. You're
yeah.
putting in that prey species for the next level. You can't have fungi until you have bacteria because the fungi eats the bacteria, guys. Like it, that's where
100%.
aquatic is so amazing. Like, do you take your filters or do you even have filters, or you're just using 100% plant?
I don't even have to. Like, if you look, I have
Okay.
I have
Okay.
like some old, like some filters, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
there's just plants in them. Like, I don't put filters in there. But I will
Okay.
say, to your point, right? I kind of want to throw some in there, because I do love when there's a good sponge filter in there. I'll take that sponge and I will take that and just squeeze that out on plants and stuff. And I
Yep.
just left it in my flood table the other day, and now I was like, oh man, I missed that. I wanted to grab something, but once it gets moving, like, it's just more work. But I will say,
Yep.
the aquatic ecosystems can be so funny, because, for instance, I had this
Mhm.
big 75-gallon tank that was super stable, never did a water change for a year and a half at my house. and it actually still had its old, big, back filter with a sponge with some equivalent of hydrogen basically for
Yep.
biologicals, and then charcoal on top, right? And a layer of charcoal. And I
Mhm.
was like, this charcoal, I probably don't need. I just took it off one day, and it had been there for 2 years. So like the active charcoal wasn't doing, I was supposedly depleted. For whatever reason, me taking it off changed everything. Water turned green, everything shifted. And you'll do like one small tweak with an aquarium. I've noticed I've developed a huge appreciation for pH, because at the end of the day, all my aquariums are like somewhat the same,
Mhm.
but I'll see like drastic differences once in a while, and shifts all of a sudden. Sometimes because of a species that's in part of it. I introduced well, by accident, I had this beautiful like grass tank, right? And we have
Mhm.
these crayfish, right? These blue lobster crayfish. I start off with one, and they apparently evolved while in captivity to be able to self-reproduce. They developed a third
Mhm.
chromosome, I believe, and long story short, they can clone themselves. So they've been showing up in my tanks all over. And one showed up there. I was like, I'm going to leave it in there. It started uprooting grass. All of a sudden, I went in, and this was the most pristine tank I had, right? And within a month, right, it had shifted the entire ecology, where a fish, I went in, and this catfish was dead. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I realized like the whole ecosystem was killed because of this one little crayfish. It was nuts. And you never know, I mean, long term though, and that's my perspective, if it messed it up, good or bad is subjective, right? To the crayfish is probably better, or maybe worse, I
Yep.
don't know, but someone liked it, I assume, but that
Well,
catfish didn't, unfortunately.
you think of, and I'll use blueberries as an example because of they love an acidic soil.
Yeah.
They will literally, the biology that exists for that plant will slowly change the soil structure to be more and more acidic to promote that plant's growth. The same with a brassica. They have a specific biology that
Yeah.
interacts with them, uh, I guess, better than some of the other biology. So in your garden beds, you plant, say, tomatoes. If you plant another vining plant, because in our planet in its development went from aquatic to plants on the planet, and then they went through a progression up to our trees, and trees like 2,500 fungi compared to zero bacteria. But the earlier plants like more bacterial. So they will literally change the soil structure to match the plant. That's what we call terroir. You know, the environment changes to
Yeah.
meet the plant, but the plant can change to meet the environment as well. So that's what's happening. Your crayfish is going, this environment isn't right for me. So I'm going to put in my biology that's right for me. I'm going to create my own best environment. And that's where the change is. But when you're having your plants change,
So
and I
right.
wanted to mention this, is take a look, is it in a vegetative state or is it switching to a fruiting state? And if it's switching to the fruiting state, it's a different um, biological component creating the different enzymes. So
Yeah.
biology is being activated. The biology that was in the vegetative state is backing off and converting it to a different need for the plant. So you might want to check and see in your back of your head if that's correlating at all.
Yeah, sweet. Sorry, I just bumped my, I knew I was gonna do this. Let me
No
fix my
worries.
mic. I'm always like, what's this?
You're,
I itched myself, and it was the microphone. So sorry, let me try to.
yep.
Oh boy, now it's all messed up.
Oh, no worries, Matt. No
All right, there
worries.
we go. Yeah, to your point though, can you hear me all right?
Yep. Yep.
All right, cool. I wasn't sure if I messed it up. All right, let's see. I think it's good. Right? Yeah, that's good.
Yep. You're good.
So to your point, like I've totally seen that. Like everything shifts, the biology around plants shifts, and you can see that.
Mhm.
We live in these deciduous, areas. Like you're in Canada, and I'm in New England. It's probably pretty similar, and you can feel the ecology. You can feel the microbes changing everything. You can hear the insects are shifting, and the plants
Mhm.
are driving that. And I think actually the more I've learned, the more I'm like, all right, at the end of the day, it's really about soil microbes that, and probably aquatic microbes. And
Mhm.
my hunch, my thought, like the more I've learned is like, all right, so they were on the ground, they were like, we need solar panels, and they built plants. They allowed plants to
Mhm.
exist. Or and then we're just like, if you look at us, like you study worms and whatnot, we're just basically mobile worms that can walk around with the digestive tract, and we're just doing all of the bacteria a favor by going places they otherwise couldn't. We're just
Mhm.
vehicles for them. And so, if you don't really look out for those microbes, well, we're not going to do too well. But it does shift everything. And I have noticed, like, you shift pH is a huge thing I've noticed when
Mhm.
I've started to even look at things and be like, all right, I can tell where the pH is shifting to potentially. But a question you might be you're bringing up is, with plants, are they driving that? Some, like pine kind of are known to, drop pine needles, although they're not as
Yeah.
acidic as maybe people might think. But like blueberries, to your point, like I've struggled with blueberries, like, to get them established, and I feel like I'm finally getting this like island of blueberries going, and they're building the ecology for themselves there, and they're finally starting to go. And I'm kind of
Yeah.
getting my hand backing off now that I've gotten it going, and now I'm just kind of letting them do their job. Yeah.
Well,
So
it's really amazing. Like I think it's in Montana or Idaho, and the natives have been monitoring this for literally, hundreds and hundreds of years. But it's a valley of blueberries that is slowly, growing and growing. Because normally people think, okay, they last for X amount, and then you got to redo them. But this patch has been going literally for hundreds of years, and it loves and is building more of the soil it likes. So it's moving that 1 inch a year,
mhm.
biologically changing the pH, etc., in the soil to promote new blueberry bushes. But understand as well, Matt, that even in the rhizosphere, along your root hairs, okay, the biology is literally controlling the pH specifically for what is needed in that area. Say you have magnesium that's at, I'm just going to use an absurd number, 1, pH of 1, and it won't be digested unless it's at 1. The biology can literally change that specific area to exist at 1 pH so that it can grab that particular component to pull it into the plant to build the cells in the plant. It regulates what's going on. The plant's doing this, the plant's doing that. As you said, the plant's a solar collector. It's collecting energy. It's doing what it's supposed to do, but the biology is using that solar energy to
Mhm.
build more plant and to build more biology. It's actually the biology that's truly in control, even in our bodies. Okay.
Yep.
I don't tell myself, oh, yeah, baby, I need another heart cell. You guys make me another heart cell. Okay. No, my biology that's making all those cells is going, okay, this heart cell is just about done. We need to replicate another heart cell, guys. So, who's actually in control? You know, it isn't my brain thinking about it. Okay.
It's so true. Yeah, and it's so true. And I don't know if you found this, but I feel I've spent my whole life being a biology nerd. I was a little kid. I had like all these tank, like I was,
Yep.
I had tanks, and the more I've learned, the less I feel like I understand or know. And it's hard. Like I just my logic every time I think I know something, the universe tells me, don't be so confident. And I remember one time I was talking to one of my mentor to me, Dr. Mertz from the New England Wildlife Center, and
Cool.
I had this tortoise that someone had, left with us, and we were caring for. It was a Russian tortoise and desert
Mhm.
going tortoise, and I was like, I put this water bowl in here. He's never drinks out of it, but I do it because otherwise people are like, why don't you give that guy water? He gets all his water from his food. He doesn't need this
Yep.
water bowl. And sure enough, the next day, walk over after saying this to him, and the universe was like, hey, stop making these, don't think you know anything, because he was sitting there in the middle of in the middle of this water bowl, just pushing his head under, drinking the water, just enjoying his time. I was like, okay, I guess I was wrong. I don't know. I know nothing. So I just realize that anything I might understand to be facts, there's, we think we know much, but I think we're just at the start, hopefully, of
Mm.
humanity and knowledge. And we're still in the Neanderthal stage, like we're just starting to learn. We really don't understand our universe, which is so cool. Like there's so much to learn and understand, hopefully we just keep on that path.
And you guys are going to, but I wanted to put this up because I think it's very special and has a lot of meaning. Thanks for all the kind words, Matt. Love being on this journey with you. And this is Matt's wife, guys, if you guys don't know that, but this is the love that exists. And we can have that not just with, each other and our human species, but plants, animals. Your turtle kicked you in the butt saying, come on, Matt. Like, I'm
Yeah.
going to show you, brother.
Yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to show you it, and it's great. It's just an endless journey. And you're right. Like I think about that too. With life, it's like I have all sorts of friends. I have a lot of human friends, but I'd say most of my humans are all sorts of species. So
Yep.
you can have incredible relationships with all sorts of different species, and that's what it's all about. I think that's honestly something that's pretty amazing about being a human. I think humans, when you look at like animals and whatnot, we have more symbiotes, like symbiotic relationships than any other species, right? There's so many living creatures that we interact with, and our existence depends on them and their existence on ours for the most part. And it's pretty neat, and we just need to be thoughtful about it.
Well, and like you were saying earlier, we actually have more bacteria and, how do I want to phrase this? The cells in our body, our DNA is only a very, very minute portion of the DNA in our bodies. The rest is biological. And, we are the soil, we are the plant, we are the animal. The basic same biology is in us as it is in the fish, the plants, and the other animals. We all come from that same basic biology that makes us up. We're in a lot of ways more plant or more animal than we are human. Our DNA structure is just telling us, okay, you got, white skin, you got, red hair, you got pink eyes, whatever it happens to be the combination. That's all our DNA is. The rest is all biological. It's all biology.
Yeah, 100%. And so much of even our cells, right? Like are evolved from previous life forms and whatnot. And there's so much evidence of that. So yeah.
Well, I'm just going to bring up two things just to share my point. And this is from the creator of the Johnson Sioux bioreactor. Okay, this was from one of his presentations. 20,000 human genes, 2 to 20 million microbial genes. So, yeah.
Wow.
Just as a simple point, guys.
So cool. So cool. Yeah. Don't overestimate ourselves or underestimate the rest of biology out there, right?
It's all about the biology. So
it's all about the biology.
In our guts, in your plant's gut, which is the soil, okay, in your animal's guts, the more biodiverse there is, not just in the biology, but in the substances supplied to the biology. So, the organically broken down materials. So, what are you eating? Are you eating what's feeding your cells that you're making? Are you giving the plants to be broken down, because that's what they're made of, those particular cells? That's where compost and organic material is so important.
100%. You're so right. You can't underestimate it. And when I always cover soil. Like I see soil as almost the core of life, right? And when I see it exposed, right? Like I remember seeing it one day, it was like, I had swept off mulch or whatever, and it was just exposed soil. It was
Yeah.
dying. It's like an open wound, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It needs to be protected. It does not want to be exposed. And so I love using rice hulls or something on top, just never seeing soil, hopefully plant matter, grasses, whatever. So my yard's pretty much just covered in green. And it took a while. You were talking about how long it takes. When we've lived in our home for 9 years now, and when we got there, it had been, a traditional landscape with like plastic covered land, and the soil was dead. It took so much work and time and patience and allowing things to grow and fostering and building islands of perennials. And now it's finally taken off, so.
Cool. Yeah. It can take such a long time, but we're finding now, with the methodologies that we've learned over the last, decade or 20, 30 years, that we can help that process become a lot faster. And like, fish brew, the water out of your fish tanks, if you were putting that, on your gardenscape, even in small amounts, it's going to help improve that much faster, because the biology is going to be there. It's going to soak into your soil structure. And that's where, that 1 inch a year to, oh, I got a sprayer, I can do 10 acres in one go. And if only even just a minuscule percentage of that biology survives and moves into your soil structure, it's a lot easier to move your wand around spraying than it is for that 1 inch a year to move across your lawn.
100%. And it's easy to deplete too, unfortunately, right? And and sometimes when you think like our current agricultural methodologies, to me, are so concerning, because we're taking unfathomable amounts of biological matter from the center, in the United States at least, and like
all over the world,
moving it to the coast and then putting it in the water, oceans. And it's like, that's literally not sustainable. And what are the long-term consequences of doing that? It worries me, but hey, we're starting to see it, I guess. But one of the neat things is how incredible nature is at healing itself if given the chance. So
and quickly.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like Boston, I live out in Boston, and the Boston Harbor when I was a kid was the dirtiest harbor in the world. It was terrible, and it's unbelievable now. Like we have great whites returning, orcas. Apparently, I didn't know orcas had ever lived around here. It's now become, because we've, the sewage stopped being dumped there and started being processed and cleaned. It's recovering, and it's miraculous, and it's incredible to see and inspiring, that we can reverse things, and we can allow nature to come back and see amazing things. Although the great whites, I don't, I have a fear of sharks. Okay, I don't even if I didn't know they were there, I'd be worried. Now it's just validated. Now it's my reason for saying, hey kids, don't go in the water, there's great white sharks here. I had like this app, and it's Shark Tracker, and I was like on the beach where in the town we live, and it was like looking at the map, and it was like, oh, 50 feet from where I'm standing offshore, there was like a beacon blip like a week ago of a great white shark. I'm like, all right, no one's going in the water. I'm out of here. But but it's amazing nonetheless. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But
well, if we look at energy, frequency, vibration, you were obviously attacked in the water in a past life, and you have that stuck in your psyche. That's my own personal opinion. I'll say that. Okay,
I can believe that. I feel like there's some I've been trauma in lives past or something.
You were a sailor in your past lives, and some pirate went, you're going into the go be shark meat, boy.
Or maybe I was a seal. I don't know.
It's possible. But you're seeing the great white sharks, the orcas, etc., coming back because of the predator prey model. As soon as the lower species come back, the upper species start to come back as well. And that's in everything, in our gardens, in our oceans, in ourselves. We need all the levels of species in our body. You want full genetic potential? have the most biodiverse biology possible and the most biodiverse uh, uh, molecules, because it's all
Yep.
down molecular level, as possible in your ingestion of food. And that's, I know people that literally, and they know how to make a proper biologically alive compost, because a lot of people think they're making a good compost. They're not. But the people that put it under the microscope and know, they actually will go in and do a compost bath where they'll cover themselves, like, digging the hole on the beach and covering yourself with sand. They'll do that
Yep.
with a live compost.
Yep.
And they've seen miracles in people that have been really, really sick. All of a sudden, total reversal of everything. But they have to understand, it's all of that organic material being broken down by the biology. Your skin is your largest organ.
Yep.
All that biology and the components come all of a sudden rushing into your body. And all of a sudden, there's this military force that comes in and goes, okay, you got skin psoriasis, I'm going to fix that.
Yep.
And it
You just
happens.
get, we don't, yeah, and I had someone who worked here, and we use, powdered milk and soy
Mm-hmm.
protein hydrolysate, and like, but we also bring it into compost. And I basically, I created this like mix of ingredients to feed microbes that was,
Yeah.
involved. The number of ingredients that was, the idea was like, feed them. Microbes typically reproduce at such a rapid level, and they're so prolific that it's really about their food, and their
Mm-hmm.
ecology. Like, if you want a bunch of them, it's not about spraying more microbes or whatever. Long
Yeah.
story short, my friend, who had been allergic to soy, milk, and peanuts, um, working at Gardin during that, he took his allergies disappeared,
Yep.
which was incredible. And he credits it to, a lot of that. And I think he had like low level exposures to these, not only ingredients, but being broken down by the environment. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I couldn't explain it, but yeah.
It's literally in the air. Because, okay, you go in and you brush against your plant. The what's on your plant is being shaken, and it's going into the air, and it's actually, you're breathing it in. It's on your skin. If he's getting his hands into soil that's
Yep.
full of life, all of a sudden that biology is coming in through his fingers. And you have to consider, biology is made up of all of these different components. When it comes into our body, it can be used by our body once they're die, in that predator prey, because the one biology eats the other and breaks down A, B, and C components to be used in their bodies, just like the worms are taking things through, and the worm manure is so much better than what the worm was ingesting. It's the same in our bodies. So, people don't understand why they're so sick in a city where all the smog and dust is. It's because it's
Yep.
coming through their lungs and through their skin. And your body working in your garden center, surrounded by energy, surrounded by life, oxygen, and the biology just being there in the air itself is going to
Yep.
affect it.
100%. We have our little farm at our home, and there's just so much biology there. To your
Yep.
point, like, biodiversity is my focus, particularly from a planting perspective, like just trying to, not only even within species, so it's like a couple dozen varieties of strawberries, a dozen
Cool.
varieties of blueberries, just really, really trying to vary it up. And it feels happy and healthy. And people tell us that, and it's great. It's, you can't explain it. It's just it's in the air, like you're saying, and and hopefully, we build more of that. And I'm
Yep.
seeing more and more people coming here to this, store, like, with that intention. And I feel like when I first started Garden 10 years ago, a lot of the stuff I was really excited about was like so not mainstream. I just kind of
Yep.
kept it to myself. And now I'm hearing like tons of people excited about it. It's amazing. It's such a great time to be involved in this space. I feel like so many more people are jumping into it and doing great things, and it's becoming it's a growing movement that, you know, the stuff
Yes.
that we're talking about, which is cool.
Well, and it's a growing movement globally. It's not just in North America, it's around the world. People, after what happened with the vid, people really started to look a little bit deeper at what the hell happened and why and what's
Mm.
going on our planet. And the
Yeah.
people that are even partially awake, you know, they got that big smack in the side of the head and they woke up a lot further. And instead of watching the, you know, the mainstream, you know, where they're not, you know, they're not just misinformed, you know, they're programmed to think specific ways. They
Yeah.
started really looking at shows like yours, Matt, where you're showing a different method and a different understanding. And like Silly Lily says here, you know, energy, frequency, vibration, my favorite topic, it all comes together. We're talking about the Zen garden, being in your garden and it
Mm.
affecting your health and your happiness. When we start to realize these things, all of a sudden we want that. If we go into Matt's grocery store and we sit down and we're going, oh, this is just so beautiful here. All of a sudden we want that in our house. And then Matt's going, well, if you know, here's this and this, take these home, set this up, and you can create this at home. You don't need a farm. You can do it in
Yeah.
a blooming apartment. You can be surrounded by life, my friends. And
Yep.
that is very, very special in my heart to know, Matt, that
Yes.
you're out there
Thank you.
promoting this.
And just quickly to your point, like, I think that what you said about, I think sometimes there's a mindset of you need
Mhm,
to move to the country, you need to move to a farm,
mhm.
and it's not true. Like, we need to be doing these things wherever we are, you know, apartments.
Yes.
It's amazing what you can do in small spaces, and we need to be doing it. We don't, if you don't, you know, the solution, not ever, you know, that's not a feasible solution in the first place. And you know, we have 1 acre, which is a huge, which is more than we need. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
amazing what you can produce on, you know, even in an apartment. Before, I lived in a house with, you know, probably a 20 by 50 yard, and it was incredible what you can do with that. And it's even more exciting what you can do in a small apartment, you know, and how
Yeah.
much you can do for yourself. And it's neat to see that happen.
Well, and you saw it with people starting to work with animals. You're seeing it with people starting to work with plants. It's a special, special thing. But I want to just point out something with Ghetto Hippie here. Okay. He said one, okay, who smacked my head? And Silly Lily says, cheers, you know, don't know, but you probably need some smacking, laugh out loud, heads or tails. Ghetto Hippie, both, brother. Both. You need your cannabis plant to come up and smack you in the side of the head and start going, hey man, smoke less, eat more because it's better for your body. But anyway, that's
Yeah,
just Ghetto Hippies, one of our fantastic people from our chat that's
drink some
always
tea.
here learning and helping and sharing.
Cool.
But I got to give him a hard time because he deserves it.
I understand. Yeah. Well,
So
yeah. Hey, keep going. Yeah.
Matt, you know, we're at an hour and a quarter. I don't know how much time
Oh,
you've
wow.
got. I know you say you could talk about this forever, but you know, I want to respect your time, brother.
I've got nowhere to be, but happy, you know, I don't want to bore people either. Happy to show you guys, you know, I'm not sure if you want to see anything or, yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, well,
we can wrap up.
take us around the shop. You've got
You want to see?
you're
Okay,
set up mobile, so yeah, let's walk
cool.
around the shop,
All
brother.
right, let's see.
We can
I
bring
even
you up
got,
full
let's,
screen.
oh, shoot. Let's see. Ready? All right, let me try to pick this guy up, and I got my camera. Let's see. I could even take this one out. I think I'll be able to unplug this. Let me see if this stays working.
Okay.
Let me know. Is that still
Yeah,
working?
yeah, we still
All
got
right, cool.
image.
So I'm going to try to keep the monitor so I can see, but let's see. All right, let me show you guys around. This is just the front area. So we've got all sorts of stuff. So let me see. This is a flood table right here. And I don't
Yep.
know. Tell me if the shots are good. I can't really tell. Let me turn my computer for a minute. And so
Yeah,
this is
you're
actually a
okay.
cool little pond I set up in here. And there's some plecos in here, which are pretty neat. an invasive species to a lot of places, and they've been demonized, unfortunately, because it's not their fault, it's ours. And there's 3 in here that do a great job and eat the algae and whatnot. And these 2 tables on either side flood and drain to that table and do a great job watering everyone. Let's see, there's all our aloe. I'm gonna walk around. Let's see. Here's some flood tables. Oh yeah, these are the biochar tables I was mentioning.
Cool.
So I set this up a while ago and I've been moving around. It's so great because you can just easily pull plants in and out of here. You know, it's so easy to root. And I found, like, I mean, here's an orchid. You know, let's see. There's some aloe over there. That's easy plant's real pissed. That thing's dead. So that didn't do good, but most other stuff, you know, most other stuff did. And here's something I do. Let me pull my computer. Give me 1 sec, because I just want to be able to see what you guys are seeing. Just wheel this guy, because otherwise I don't know what you guys are looking at. I don't know. Right.
Well, it's a crystal clear image, Matt, so you don't have to worry about that side of it.
Good. All right, so a grafted cactus we did. Let's see. All right, I can see this. Let's see what else.
Now, this is pretty cool. There,
so
Matt,
speaking of,
I want you to pull back out to the front to your table there and show your sign to your right, where you guys sit behind that table. I want to show people this is Matt's when he does his live streams. This is where he does them. So, you know, I wanted to show your sign and everything. So when you guys go to Matt's channel and watch their episodes, this is going to be one of the views you guys get to check out all the time. So, okay, now you can go back, Matt.
No, thank you so much. I'm trying to, let me see. All right, yeah. Let me. This you guys will probably like. So this is my flood and drain setup, and check this out. So rather than I did this once actually on a big flood table, and I put worms. I don't know if you can see them. Can you see these in here? All those red wigglers.
Yeah, you can just make them out.
You can literally throw fertilizer. I'll put like fertilizer in these grow bags, and I will then, the water will flood and drain, and it basically slowly leaches fertilizer. So this is the res under here, which you can see I throw all sorts of gunk in here. There's snails and everything. I have very living aquaponic systems. And I found that's like, it's been a really cool way. Like, it's like truly organic, right? I'm literally putting, you can see there's compost waste in here, and it breaks down the worms feed, and it's just an automated taking compost and feeding it to plants with a hydroponic system. And most people say hydroponics can't be done organically, but hey, you know, I'd say that's pretty organic. I thought this guy, I'm so excited. This I thought was dead, and it came back with vengeance. Another one I thought was dead. Check out this fig tree. All right, this looks ready. I thought this was dead. I brought it in. I don't even know. And look at this fig.
Don't do that, man. Now my mouth is watering.
Oh my gosh. I'd never even eaten a fig. And someone gave me a fig tree. And that's what, you know, oh my gosh. Grow fig trees. They're so good. They're so amazing. It's so funny. I've all of a sudden had, I don't know why, but just a ton of fig growers. And people are into figs, like are really into figs. There's certain plants that really draw people and to become obsessed. You know, figs, cannabis. Let's see, what pepper growers get really fanatic, but there's actually all plants will find theirs, but like there's a lot of really hardcore fig growers, and I'm starting to fall into that. I call them fignatics. I came up with that. I'm a dad, so I make bad jokes. Here's the pea puffers I was mentioning. Let me show you these guys. I love these guys. These are freshwater predators, and they're tiny. I don't know if you guys can see these at all.
Yeah, they're just beautiful.
And they are hunters. And so check this out. If you, I feed them these black worms now in here, and you can literally, I don't know, do you guys want me to feed them? Is that interesting?
Sure. I'd love to see it.
You know, these will eat compost and waste. These grow naturally in the soil. So I'm just going to suck some up and watch these little guys. We'll go to town on these, but they're also picking out all sorts of stuff. I don't know if everyone's excited. I mean, I fed them before the show, so they might not be too hungry, but you know, and they're eating all sorts of other stuff. And ever since I put these guys in here, I got to tell you, the ecology, to your point, like it's all about the biology, right? And it's returning to that tank. That tank was struggling. It was just overrun. And the snails, they're starting to back down. And reminds me a little. I remember learning about like at Yellowstone when they reintroduced wolves. The elk started pushing back from the streams and allowed the streams and life around the streams to recover, which was huge. So, I'm starting to see that here, right? Like plants are starting to seem to pop back and even be willing to. But yeah, so that's the front. I don't know how much more of a tour you guys want. I know it's getting late, but happy to show you anywhere.
Sure, you can show us the whole place, Matt. I got time too, brother.
Oh, cool. All right, let's do it, man. So let's see. I'll show you around. Oh, here's my crayfish tank. So here we were talking about crayfish, and how they were changing the habitat. So this is the habitat they love, and I'm not sure. I unfortunately had the pump stop once, so a bunch of them died, but a number of them did survive. And they love like this mucky, dirty environment, and this is what they're going for. And to your point, they created this environment and then they thrive in it. And I know it looks terrible, but shockingly, it is really great. Let's see, what other interesting stuff do I have? Oh yeah, one last thing going on. Let's see. You grow mushrooms at all? I love my oyster mushrooms.
Cool.
And this is something I've been doing. I've found, I've done it with hardwood. And this is an example to me. Mushrooms are such a good example of like, wow, what an incredible food source, right? Like those guys, like oyster mushrooms in particular, right? They're like all about hardwood pellet. They just consume hardwood. One time, this company called Chip Drop, I don't know if you ever heard of them. You can sign up and they drop chips. Sorry, I smudged the screen just now. They drop a load of wood chips out at your house for free.
Yeah.
I had, an entire truckload of oak wood chips dropped off. I was like, the amount of food that could be produced from this is unfathomable. High quality food, mushrooms. I think historically humans ate a lot more mushrooms, of all sorts. Like we foraged for them. And I think it's a missing part of our diet. I think the compounds in mushrooms, we don't even understand what they do for our health. And so I'm trying to consume and grow more and more mushrooms. And amazing. They literally convert waste into food. They don't require external energy resources. And I've been trying to build, like I want to build, it's not set up yet, but I started doing it, is like using, they put out tons of CO2 to the point where it inhibits their growth, cycling that with, I have people come in and we don't sell CO2 here because there's enough CO2 in the air, unfortunately, right now. And so I'm like, look, if you want to supplement CO2, compost in your grows. Like even living soils tend to do a ton to raise CO2 in an indoor grow tent. But if you really want to jack it up, set up a mushroom tent and feed the air from that in. So yeah.
The only problem with that, and because I deal with a lot of indoor, it's the keeping the percentages at the right levels. But yeah, like a lot of the hydro shops sell, pre-made mushroom blocks where you go and you bring and hang them in your grow. So, and you were saying, CO2, remember that CO2, we actually need that. The plants need that because that's what they breathe. We don't have enough of it. They can't breathe enough, which means the oxygen level literally goes down in our environment. So it's a balancing act. Our plants in the Jurassic were so much larger because there was so much more oxygen, but there was also so much more CO2 in balance. It's all about.
I've never heard anyone say that besides you. To your point, right? That the CO2 levels were higher historically during dinosaurs. Like, it is interesting, and I'm concerned with a lot of things humans are doing. But then I'm like, for the sake of life on Earth, CO2 levels increasing will increase more. It just won't be habitable by humans, unfortunately. But
well, the thing is
or less. It's a hard.
Yeah, we adjust. Like you're living in Boston. You have your cold winters. You have your hot summers, and your body slowly adjusts. Through that cycle. Because when it's minus 20 outside and the wind's howling, you want to be in the house. But when it's way too hot, you want to be in the house.
Yep.
But if you are living there like the natives did,
Yep.
okay, their bodies, their blood would thicken and their blood would thin as the seasons progress. The human species is amazing. We adjust. It might take us a generation or 2 generations. Oh, reminds me of plants and planting a new species in an area and them taking, a couple of 3 seasons to
Yeah.
adjust.
Uh-huh.
Huh. Does that make
Fish,
sense?
all of it.
Plants,
Yes, 100%.
humans,
I love it. We will. You're right. I agree with you. I so agree, and humans are incredibly adaptable. And you're right. Like the Inuits, like you'll see video of like babies in the snow. And, like
yep.
it's incredible what humans are capable of.
It
Incredible.
just like if you don't understand a brassica, you
Yep.
can literally grow in -40 weather in
Yep.
a container outside. As
Yep.
long as the heat inside of that comes up above freezing, the cells, the biology will reactivate and
Uh-huh.
keep growing that plant. And then when the sun goes down, the temperature goes down, the biology, everything goes back into the roots until the heat comes back up again, and then it starts to grow again. So how the hell is that possible that the plant can literally freeze solid
Right.
and then come back to life? Isn't that cryogenics? Aren't we researching that kind of stuff?
I don't understand. It's unbelievable what we can learn from nature, right? Unbelievable. What we could learn, what we haven't yet, what there still is to
Yes.
learn. It's
Well, what we
unbelievable.
are accepting right now, and a lot of it, Matt, has to do with the equipment that we have, and as the equipment grows, and we develop new equipment to like the Kirlian photography to see the soul
Yeah.
energy or that
Yeah.
energy. As the new equipment comes up, and we go, oh, well, now we can see that we can measure it. That's science. They want to measure, you know
Yeah.
all this stuff is going to come out. Like I, I'm not going to go any deeper. There's a lot of stuff
And to
I
your point,
can't
like
talk
it's
about
funny
on
how
YouTube.
once it's before it could be measured, it didn't exist, right? It wasn't
Yes.
real.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we need to remember with science is science, just because we don't understand something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That's not what science is, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's misinterpreted like that. Like science hasn't discovered it, therefore it's not true. And so we are moving. I think we're moving beyond that. I think honestly, a lot of like our findings, and I think humanity is starting to realize, like, wow, okay, everything I thought to be true, there's a lot of things that are shifting and opening our perspectives. It's like the further we get with humanity, the more we realize we have to go, which is
Back to
interesting.
nature.
Yeah, so it's tough. It's tough to be a scientist or a doctor because we're still in the early stages. There's only so much to work with, but I
Mm,
think the expectation of the general public is everything. And so, it's
yeah.
a little bit on us that we're, push for those responses, I guess. I don't know.
Well, and
But yeah.
there's so many scientists that have been, pushed to the side because they don't have the same, uh, or they want to share different knowledge, and they've been pushed out, and no, you're not allowed to say that, and we have these
Yeah.
blinders on, and we don't see that over there. No, 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 that doesn't exist. They don't want to
Yeah.
rewrite the textbooks, or the professors don't want to learn the new stuff that's
Yeah.
actually there, so they push it away. And Dr. Gerald Pollock, the fourth phase of water, some of the challenges that the scientists he's known have faced, and the knowledge that's been suppressed by the different generations going, no, that can't be true because I didn't learn that, I don't agree with it, so we're just not going to share that. We're just going to push you to the side and say you're a crackpot. Like, there's so much now coming out where that guy was 100% right. Tesla, Nikola Tesla was so right on A,
Yeah.
B, and C. And, it frustrates us to the extreme. And that's where, governments want to control the flow of information because they don't want us to know this. They don't want us to reconnect with nature and learn about energy, frequency, vibration. They don't want us to know that we can literally manipulate that to heal ourselves and to heal our friends and family. I don't know if you watched the episode with Jennifer from Quantum Touch, but
No,
that's
I
one
will.
that you really
Cool.
need to understand. We can do this,
Yes.
you know?
I love that. I think that's incredible, and it's hard. I think scientists, right? They're part of a community. I was working when I was at the University of Colorado. Boulder. I
Mhm.
remember I was trying to help people commercialize. I was part of this program to commercialize research and technology coming out of the university and the federal
Yeah,
labs, and people were afraid because they're worried. It's scary because if you it's your career and now it's your
yeah,
livelihood, and so and you work for a bigger institution, or and not just the institution that you work for, but like a broader community of scientists, and you have to be careful because while you're supposed to be discovering stuff, you can't ruffle feathers, and there's a lot of politics, unfortunately, to science, which is a bummer. And it's neat. One of the things I love about YouTube, and like, is, to me, it's an open source education platform, and it's
yeah,
why it's only social media besides Reddit I can really relate too much to, because it's a place where you can share failure, mistakes, information, and the community gets to vet, and that's neat. I think it's a critical part to science. I think there's an opportunity for science historically, because there wasn't data collection like there is now. The general
yeah.
public couldn't contribute. But now I think that changed, right? Anyone can contribute to science in this day and age. And I think technology is catching up to allow that to become increasingly valuable to the scientific community, hopefully. That's what I hope, at least. But
Well, you're considered a citizen scientist, Matt. I'm considered a citizen scientist. I was a truck driver, so all I could do was think, for,
yeah.
all those hours I was alone. I didn't
Yeah.
listen to the radio and stuff like that. I let my mind wander and experience and think. And I can literally create something in my head for a problem and then go, okay, that won't quite work that way. Rip it down and rebuild it in my mind until it works, until the technology that is available
Mhm.
will work to solve that problem. I've done that all my life. Um, we have these capabilities to give us so much more, and I always would go to books in the library, and the Dewey Decimal System. I don't know if you even remember that. It's probably before your
I do.
time.
I do. I do. I know.
Yeah.
I was born 1980. I'm 45, so that
Oh,
was
okay,
my
okay.
through high
Yep,
school. I know the Dewey Decimal System. I vaguely remember
yep.
how to navigate it. But yeah, it's funny you say that about, like, you were a truck driver. I wasn't, but I think I would have enjoyed it, and I always loved driving. But
Mhm.
like when I moved back here from Colorado, I drove back with Mandy with our car and our dogs, and actually an aquarium. That's all we put in the car, and like fish. It was in a guitar. I was like, and then I flew back and packed up. I was like, she's like, "Are you sure?" And I regret. I should not have tried to pack our home up by myself, but I did it, and packed up in a 25-foot box truck and drove across with that. And actually, during that time, I listened to this incredible aquaponics podcast, which really probably inspired Gardin. It was,
Mhm.
what was the guy's name? Oh my gosh, Nate Story. What was the company? And it was phenomenal. He did like this walkthrough, and I just spent the entire trip basically listening to it. And it was so inspiring. And I spent that time just thinking about what I really wanted to be doing. Like, did I really want to be a programmer for some random? And I was like, this is my passion, like this stuff, what he was
Yeah,
working on. It was an aquaponics thing. And I was like, I really love, just the connection of ecology and humanity, basically, So,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, when
cool.
you're alone, it's like going and sitting in a forest.
Yep.
You're alone with your own thoughts, and things can come in, and you can get inspiration out of like I would get inspiration from a cloud that was going across the
Yeah.
horizon, going, oh yeah, hey, that reminds me of A, B, and C. But allowing that, and that's where in our cities, in our society, we're not allowed to slow down and really connect. And that's where the Zen gardens, sitting in your garden for your meditation, taking your shoes off, connecting with the energy, frequency, vibration of our planet, the Schumann resonance. When you start combining all of that, like Matt did on his trip, all of a sudden you have Gardin now, and it's a beautiful place to go. So if you guys are ever in Boston, you know where you got to go and visit. Now, do you do courses? Do you do courses and stuff like that in your shop?
We were for a while, and we're just spread so thin. It's just me and Manny. We got two little guys. We basically have a farm, and then here, and we realized we were like, and part of it was honestly, as much as it's cool. Like, I love this place because we get to interact with real human beings, and
yeah.
But from a course perspective, I realized I was like, all right, I would explain something. The thing I love about YouTube is that you explain something to someone, and maybe I'll explain the same thing to 100 people. I'm like, I can do it really well, and to put it up there and do a better explanation and allow it to reach as many people as are interested, rather than just people who are willing to come to the store. And so start leading away from doing courses and more doing like, the online stuff, just YouTube, because then it's, just such a broader reach. And it's been neat. I've made friends like you, I consider, and Hank, who introduced me to you, and just so many cool people. And also, bringing people who are local onto stuff. So instead of just dragging people, rather than doing courses, basically dragging friends and interested people onto like YouTube content and doing it live with them. And it's been fun.
Well, the University of YouTube, like Gerald Pollock, you can go and you can watch all these videos that he's done. Dr. James White, Dr. Lane Ingham, speaking at Cambridge, they recorded it and they put it on YouTube. You can watch the whole presentation that she did, like you were sitting there as a student. That's where I learned all of this stuff. I just kept watching more videos. I'd find somebody like Matt that's really, really interesting, who I relate with, and I'd go back in their history and I'd, put them in the search, and I'd watch all their videos, saying the same basic thing in different ways, sharing that knowledge and sharing, and I'd learn, I'd ingest it like Matt's done with, on YouTube. It's the best way to share it.
It is, and on top, for me, I'm pretty ADHD, so I love watching video because I can pause, think about it, do some research, rewind a bunch, and I'll go to like real classes for me, and I'll be like, oh shoot, I tuned out for a second, now I'm lost, and
I do the same thing.
I love the video. It's just a really appealing model for me. It's nice, and it's been super fun. I don't think I've ever enjoyed doing something so much.
I would look at a 3-hour video, and it might literally take me 6 or 7 hours to get through, because I do the exact same thing as you. I'd have to pause it, and I'd have to really think, okay, where does that fit in? And, there was times I'd stop, I'd meditate for an hour to really let it soak in that knowledge. And I'm a puzzle guy. So I'd here's a new puzzle piece. Where does it fit? Okay. It's
and to your point, like the more novel it is, the more time I need to bring it in, and so 100%. Yeah. Cool.
Well, I think Mandy is basically telling us, it's time, Matt. Thank you so much for having us. You've got a special show. We've had a very special show with Matt today, and Mandy, we're going to have to do another one. And young lady, you're going to have to come on and talk as well.
You should. Oh, that one. If you would ever want to have her, she's phenomenal. We have like our different strengths, and maybe do that one from our chicken barn or something. I don't know. But yeah, if you ever want, we'd love, or wherever you think. But yeah, it was so much. I had a blast. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Well, I'm lucky that you were brought here, where one of our people that is always in chat reached out to you, and you reached out to me, and I appreciate the people that are helping me to bring on people like you, Matt. And I so appreciate what you guys are doing. And I love to have you back. I love to have you as a couple. And, you guys have your YouTube channel. If you want me to come on and give you guys a hard time,
Yes,
let me
we need to
know,
do
and
that.
we'll do
That'd be
that as
awesome.
well.
I would love that, Ken. Thank you so much. This will definitely not be the last time. Thank you. And had a blast. Until we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
You bet. Guys, and don't go away. We'll talk after. Guys, tomorrow night is Andy Lopez and myself, the Invisible Gardener. So I think we're talking about composting, or was that last week? He comes out with so much amazing stuff, guys. And then I don't think I've got anybody scheduled for until Sunday, and then no, Thursday. Thursday we have a new show. Chiropractic is Sexy with Dr. Paula Ruffin and her friend, another chiropractor. So, we've got two wonderful ladies talking about chiropractic, etc. But, she brought out the TMJ. So if you got TMJ, you want to watch
I do.
her last show.
Wow. Okay.
And
I did. I don't know if
she shares how to fix it.
Cool. Oh my gosh. Yes. I've ground my teeth down a bit. So
functional chiropractors. So,
wow.
She's amazing content. But guys, that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm taking a couple of days off. Sunday, Dr. Paula's on again with her weekly show. These are going to be weekly shows that are coming on the network as well now. So you guys are going to want to check that out. But guys, the Vortex guy that we didn't have on Monday is going to be on this coming Monday. So you want to talk energy, frequency, vibration, ley lines, vortexes, etc. That's a show you're not going to want to miss. But guys, have a wonderful day. We'll see you guys tomorrow on the Gardens, the Untold Story.